And although we have discussed many things, the main point you have to remember, and that is the point which is actually you are expected to properly internalize for the purpose of the syllabus, is that how to deal with electromagnetic fields in quantum mechanics, which is by turning on a gauge field in the Hamiltonian, by transforming the momentum into some, this kind of momentum are called covariant form of momentum, which is gauge independent, and basically how do you add a electromagnetic field in a quantum Hamiltonian. And to appreciate the point of this local gauge invariance of quantum mechanics and how that leads to demanding this electromagnetic field. These two are the main points to remember and properly internalize. And the other, a lot of discussion, other discussion we had about the structure of gauge theory. If you understand it well, it's great, but if you don't worry about it too much. So it will come to you eventually. Okay. Yeah.
I had a question. I just wanted
Yes.
to ask, does Noether's theorem apply to both global and local gauge symmetry?
Noether theorem.
Mm.
Yeah, Noether theorem is for global symmetry, right? It's
But
a, for example,
gauge symmetry indicates that charge is conserved, right?
yeah, okay. Sorry, let me think. I might have not correctly answered it. So you need a continuous transformation, right? And does it has to be local or global? That's the question. Local charge conservation and yeah, I think I answered it wrongly. It has to be local. It can be local. It's correct.
Mm. So global gauge symmetry doesn't indicate the conservation of any quantity.
It just indicate conservation of probability density. That's the probability. It's trivial. It's
Okay.
of course indicate global means everything is multiplied by a phase factor. Everything is preserved, indicate a conservation of probability. And the local is also, what is the local implying?
Charge.
The local implies conservation of charge. But
Okay.
in this case, what is charge? In this case, charge is probability density, local probability density, correct. Yeah, so it implies local probability density. It conserves local probability density if you want to think in terms of Noether's theorem.
Okay.
Okay, so now we are going to talk about time reversal. So in order to understand time reversal, let me give an idea of all the symmetries in classical and quantum mechanics and see where does it fit in this picture, all the kind of things you have learned so far. So let me start with a little bit of introduction to time reversal, that how time reversal is a bit peculiar and how you want to deal with it within your formalism. So first of all, the first thing to remind you that when we call about time reversal, we basically mean motion reversal. It is not the science fiction way of saying it. I think this light is problematic, so let me turn off this light. No, even then it is problematic. Yeah. So normally when we look at this science fiction or some movies which implies time reversal, it tries to say that the observer or the person who is watching the movie is has a sense of forward time, which means every process, everything else is forward except the object they are looking at is going back in time. But since we know that perception of time or measurement of time is about motion, so time reversal, the word time reversal actually implies motion reversal. And since we feel is little bit of drama, so we made it sound like that. But actually, if you look at Wigner's original paper where this was first discussed, the word he used is motion reversal. Okay. So what does it mean? So it means that if you or if you want to think about time reversal way, they are not very different, but it sounds less dramatic when you say it is motion reversal. It's like, say, if you have made a movie of some motion and then you run the movie backward, can you distinguish between these two? So one classic example is, let's say if I throw this chalk and catch it, then it follows this trajectory. It follows this trajectory and it comes back. Okay. And if I run this movie backward, this motion backward, there is no way to say that it is different. It is just the upward moving motion is a time reverse partner of the downward moving motion. So, and that fact is depicted very well in the Newton's equation. Because if you take t2 minus t, because it is double derivative, so if I replace it by some t prime, then your equation of motion is d2x dt tilde f. And there are many such examples. Like for example, think of a pendulum motion. So the object is velocity 0 here. If you start it from here, it goes here and comes back, and its time reverse partner is just the opposite. And it is just like this, throwing a ball upwards and catching it. When you run the movie backward, there is no difference between these two. So now it sounds less peculiar, and it sounds that it might have some importance, that even though we are actually not doing any time reversal in reality, but there is some sense in talking about whether an object or a dynamics has that kind of a symmetry. Okay. Now it turns out that in microscopic world, any microscopic rule must be time reversal symmetric, and I will give you more examples. And already you can see from Newton's equation, you also know it to be true from Maxwell's equation. But macroscopic world need not be, right? The macroscopic, we know examples of time reversal symmetry making motion in macroscopic scale. Can you give me some example? Any attempt?
Sir, could you repeat the question once again?
Yeah, so do you know let's forget microscopic. Can you give me an example of a time reversal asymmetric motion, or an example where you break if you run the movie backward, or in other words, if you the time reverse partner of a motion.
Whenever we have a non-conservative force in the system, like
Correct.
friction.
Correct. Good. So anyone else want to comment on that?
So if we have magnetic field down to the plane, inside the plane, and if charge is moving, then it will go in circle, but we will reverse the time, the velocity will be backward and the path will change.
Correct.
Path of
This
the
is
charge
another
will
example.
change.
Good. Now, and one more example, somebody who did some StatMech thermodynamics.
Sir, in linear response theory, we have this
No,
time,
go say something simpler.
like again in presence of some sort of field, we have this breaking of time reversal symmetry.
This category we already discussed. One is non-conservative. Okay. Second is B field. Some field which does that, and one example is B field.
Entropy.
I'm seeking a third example which you have seen either in
Entropy.
Correct. So the example of cases where you increase entropy, like if you drop an egg, the egg will break, but it will never happen that the backward motion is never possible, and you will, which means the broken egg collects it together and comes to become a whole egg. And it is a popular science example, and you explain it with entropy. Okay. Now, can you tell me that where are they coming from? Because equation of motion doesn't have it. They are all classical examples. Let's leave the magnetic field aside for some time, because it's not Newton's equation, it's an electromagnetic equation. But let's take these two cases. They should be explainable from Newton's equation. Then where are they coming from? Newton's equation itself is not time reversal symmetric. How is it happening then? Any attempt?
Sir, one more time, could you just say?
Yeah, so the first example and the third example, the only ingredient in these two problems is Newton's equation, right? And you don't need Maxwell's equation or electrodynamics. That's why I'm leaving out the second example for time being. So in the first example and third example, since the only thing you need is, this is an example of particle following Newton's law, how are you getting non-conservative force, or how are you getting entropic? Why a egg cannot come back and a broken egg cannot become whole again? How will you explain that from Newton's equation? Can you? Or if you cannot, then what do you need?
So there is basically a time-dependent part in this Hamiltonian. If you write that time-dependent part, and that symmetry of that function determines if it is a symmetry, if it is an odd function, then this time reversal asymmetry will be there.
Is that the case? Can someone else agree or disagree with that statement? Come on, someone who had taken a course on StatMech should know that where does this time forward arrow of time business comes in entropy.
As because of the probability, like
Correct. So it's a matter
Keeps
of
on-
probability. It doesn't come from
Yeah.
dynamics. Correct. So let's go over it. So there is no non-conservative force in microscopic world. Okay. So where does non-conservative force comes from? Non-conservative comes from, so one example is friction. Okay. So what is this? So you take a block of matter on a rough surface. Okay. You pull it this way, the friction works this way. Always friction is opposite, it resists motion, right? Or you drop a ball in a viscous fluid, this is the experiment you do, right? So it drags it in opposite direction. That's friction. But friction is a microscopic phenomena. It comes because of the electromagnetic interaction between the molecules of this object and this surface. So when you are describing the macroscopic object, which means a big block of matter moving against another surface, which is another big block of matter, then you can get this, it's as a many body effect, where the molecules of these two objects either attract or repel or do something, that give rise to friction. But at a molecular level, at particle-particle interaction or between two atoms of this, the only force you have is Coulomb force. And the Coulomb force is not time reversal symmetry breaking force. Right? So at microscopic scale, there is no time reversal symmetry breaking. And the entropy business comes purely from probability. You can simply take this example by saying that if I have a box of gas and there is two possible states, let's say I have one molecule and they can be either left or right. Okay? There are two states. Now, if I start with on the left side, both molecules, and I ask the question if I let them do some move around. So let's say I have two molecules, and if I let them move around, then what is the probability that after some time they will be on the left side? Both of them will be left side. And you know this probability is very low because the possible configuration of the molecules are LL, LR, RL, RR, and both late is 1/4 of this 4 configuration. Now, if you have n particles, n gas molecules, that probability is 1/2 to the power n, right? So for Avogadro number of particle, it's almost probability 0 to see such a phenomena, which is, and then we explain that by introducing a quantity called entropy, which counts the number of microstate and quantize this phenomena. So similarly, there are infinitely many configuration at which a egg can break, but there is only one configuration at which it can recombine. So even though from Newton's equation nothing rules that out, so it might sound peculiar to you because you don't experience this. Newton's equation doesn't rule out such a motion where that can happen, but entropy probability rules it out because it's extremely improbable to see it even like in a lifetime of universe. So these are the two cases of time reversal symmetry breaking you have seen, but they are totally for different reasons. But as far as microscopic laws are concerned between particles, and Newton's equation says there is time reversal symmetry is preserved, and that is always maintained even in any complicated context. Okay, are you in the same page with me? Now I will come to the electromagnetics and see what does it. I will come to that point, but is this point clear so far? This is
Sir,
what you
can
know already.
Can you explain the non-conservative part again?
Yeah, so where does non-conservative force come from? Non-conservative force originates from the interaction between particle and like this individual particle of these two macroscopic matter, right? And since the nature of that interaction is always same, it's either attractive or repulsive, whatever it is, it will always insert the identical type of force, no matter which direction you are moving, and that force is resists the motion. So let's say it's an attractive interaction or something of van der Waals type interaction. Usually that is the most common type of interaction. So that will try to resist the motion because it will try to keep the particles bounded. So that is why you are getting a macroscopic sense. You are introducing, you are capturing this phenomena as friction by giving a phenomenological name of a force which resists motion. But where does that force come from? That force comes from the individual interaction of particles. And when you write down that in terms of Coulomb's law or van der Waals law, it doesn't violate the conservation principle when you write it in the form of a Newton's equation. So even though the Newton's equation is not violated, at a macroscopic scale of motion, there is always a force which is opposing motion. So that is the example of non-conservative force. Make sense?
Yes, sir. And sir, regarding the entropy, when we take the probability case, it doesn't say that the egg coming back, it doesn't rules it out, right? It only says that
No,
the probability
it
is
doesn't rule it out.
so small, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So the arrow of time business is a matter of probability. It's a matter of configuration. It's a matter of complexity, right? If you have two molecules, it's much more probable that you will see this kind of motion that the whole gas is one half of the box, one half of the room, but the probability is almost zero, not zero. That in this room where I'm teaching, the entire air is on one half of the room and people are dying in the other half. Okay, so that you'll never see because of probability, not because of dynamics, not because of Newton's law. Okay, everybody are in the same page for this?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so now let's move further. Let's say we demand this in quantum mechanics. We demand that the microscopic form of the basic dynamics of quantum mechanics must preserve this. And so that means anything you calculate at single particle level, nothing should be time reversal symmetry. But when you try to do that, you encounter a problem, and that is why time reversal symmetry needs a little special treatment. Okay. So what's the problem? Can someone see that? Comments? So the problem is because Schrodinger equation is a first derivative equation. We also discussed this in some length earlier, that why it is possibly first derivative, how to make sense of it. Of course, if you calculate it, if you formulate it, it's one thing, but how to physically make sense of it. But let's take this point that it's not like a typical wave equation. Wave equation is double derivative in the spatial direction, in the spatial part, and double derivative in the temporal part. But Schrodinger equation is one derivative here, but two derivatives here. Here h psi, the space derivative. It's more like a heat equation actually, the diffusion equation, which is also of similar form, and heat equation is of course a dissipative equation which has time reversal symmetry breaking. But this is a fundamental equation, which means it describes particle-particle interaction. It is not like a many particle or kind of thing. So it has the burden of being time reversal symmetry. So if I take T2 minus T, and that means, so I define it, this operation, this is the operation on the parameters of the theory. and I want some operator which must act on tau, okay, to give me, I want an operator which will do this job, okay, take t2 minus t. But if I only have that operator which does this much, then the problem is, if you take t2 minus t, so let's call it this operator on both sides of the quantum mechanical law. So then you get I h bar, because you are taking t2 minus t everywhere, you get a minus t here, and you get a tau psi t x psi x t Now I am taking this tau on this side, assuming that the h doesn't have any time dependent term. If it does, then it's a defined complexity, but let's do the simple problem first. So that means clearly that you have a let me call it some psi tilde. So you get a equation which is an equation with a minus sign. Okay. So this is the problem. So what to do with this minus sign? It's not Schrodinger equation. You cannot put an arbitrary minus sign. And this also will lead to some other problem, because that means if this guy have a energy E, this guy will have a energy minus E. So and we have discussed earlier in single particle motion, quantum mechanics, that minus E is unphysical. It leads to stability problem. So now what to do with this? So how to account for this? So one way, it seems that when you do t2 minus t, you should be also doing I2 minus I. If you do that, then it is fixed. But is that allowed? Is that legal? So what do you think? Will that mess with some other part of the theory?
Yes, sir.
What will you mess with?
The time propagator operator, which we use.
Yeah, but it's a time reverse symmetric partner, so it should go to the other direction, because the propagator will pick up a minus sign, but the time is also negative, right?
Yes, sir.
So what is it messing with?
The whole wave function itself.
Okay,
whole
we'll see
time-
that.
Sir, the
Okay,
momentum.
Momentum.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
momentum.
but
operator.
momentum has a time also inside it, right? Okay, so we'll see in a moment what is it messing with. But notice that the fact that quantum mechanics or Schrodinger equation of the wave function business is projective. Projective means you can do whatever you want without messing the measurables. Okay, that will rescue us. That property will save this situation. Okay, the measurable means the relative. So it doesn't matter what you do with wave function, as long as the inner product of that wave function with another wave function, not just the inner product, the mod of the inner product is preserved and the square of the wave function is preserved, you can formulate your theory in a way without messing with those two objects. That is what will rescue us. That is what we will see. Okay. Okay. So let's now recap a little bit. I will come to that. I just gave you a prelude of how time reversal appears in classical and quantum mechanics, and how it needs some special treatment in quantum mechanics. That is what we will learn in this tomorrow's lecture. So let's recap a little bit of in general symmetry in quantum and classical mechanics a little more, and then try to understand what are these. The time reversal is not alone. There is a class of symmetries which need some special treatment. What are those symmetries, and what are how these various forms of symmetries appear in quantum mechanics in general? Okay. Any questions so far? I posed the problem. I shown you the problem. I have not given the solution yet. That I'll discuss. But is everything clear so far? Okay, good. So I have to switch camera. So let me go down and switch the camera. Okay, let's do a quick recap of how these various form of symmetries all you have seen. So in classical mechanics, you have mostly
Sir?
seen, yes,
Will it change the time evolution part?
yes, it will, but we want to change that, right? We are moving the the time evolution backwards anyways. It's a reverse.
But it will add as a time factor is e to the power I something. But when we will take probability or any expectation value, it will remain unchanged.
Yes, that is what I said, that you should not mess with the measurables. It will remain unchanged. But the fact that your dynamical equation is changing, so the point is following that if you just do a T2 minus T, it is not preserving your Schrodinger equation. This problem doesn't appear, notice, in all the symmetries you have done earlier, because they don't mess with the parameter of the theory, right? You do some unitary transformation UH, you apply it on both sides, as long as it's commute, it is fine, everything is fine. And then you just get a
Right.
new, in terms of that, you get degeneracy and everything from there. This is not like that. It is bringing an extra minus sign, and that tells you somehow you have to formulate this in a way such that it also changes the I2 minus I, and you have to also make sure that the projective character, keeping the projective character, that it is whatever you are doing, it doesn't mess with any of the observables. And you can do that as long as you know that the projective nature of quantum mechanics gives you a lot of freedom, that how do you construct the objects that are not observable such that the observables are intact. So that is the point we will exploit. That is how we will formulate the we will take an account of time reversal symmetry in quantum mechanics. So this is just a hint that where the solution is, and this is also to give you a feel that how it is different. It is different from anything else you have seen. Okay. Okay. Somebody might be already familiar with some aspects of it, but I think most of you have not seen it, especially the IPHD, those who did a course on quantum mechanics before. Okay. So let's now review symmetries in general, and and what kind of all the kind of symmetry that you are going to see or in quantum and classical mechanics. So the first kind is, of course, the classical mechanics. We have learned that symmetries lead to conservation law, which is Noether's theorem. And we have learned this whole business of continuous symmetry. This theorem is called continuous symmetry. That means you can take account of it by an infinitesimal transformation, like rotation or translation. Even a finite rotation, you can think it first as an infinitesimal transformation and combining many of them to give the finite transformation. And for this kind of thing, we have seen there is this generator business, the generator of that transformation, and that leads to eventually Lie group and Lie algebra, which is something we discussed in the previous semester. Then there is a second category of symmetry we have encountered, that is dynamical symmetries. These dynamical symmetries are basically not a wildly distinguished category. It is very similar to that because it also involves some conserved quantity and some commutation being zero, etc. And one example is this Runge-Lenz in hydrogen atom, or this two-dimensional harmonic oscillator problem I gave you in the class, and I gave it as a quiz problem for the IPHD students, that where you have seen these extra vectors which arise, which you cannot account from symmetry, rotation, or anything else, but they are hidden symmetries. So they are often called hidden. So because they are hidden, people sometimes try to talk about it in a different context. They are not so obvious from the geometry and the structure of the problem, and but they are basically similar in of that other category. Now, there is a third category which is accidental symmetries, and we have not yet encountered that a proper accidental symmetry. Well, we discussed some, but it is not. You can call it in the category of accidental symmetry, which is this rectangular well. Right? You cannot account it as a symmetry or conservation law in that sense, because we know if it is a square well, there will be degeneracy, but it's a rectangular well whose ratio of the length is proportional, is same as the ratio of two certain wave function states. Then you know that there is an accidental degeneracy there, and there are more subtle, more deeper example for this kind of category, this kind of problem. And these are the basically three symmetries you have encountered in the previous course. In this course, you have accounted for gauge symmetry. Since we just discussed it, I will not go over it again. Now, the fourth category, these are all coming from classical dynamics. It's all there. It's just a fact of nature, all these symmetries. How to account for, take care of them in quantum mechanics, that is what we will learn in this course. And what we learned already these things in the previous course. So, gauge symmetries are present in CM, classical mechanics, ED, and all sort of theories like gravity, etc., which we discussed. Then there are these discrete symmetry. That is what we will focus on in this and next lecture. So one example is space inversion. We have seen a glimpse of this in the previous semester's course, where we had this symmetry of operator of a potential Vx is plus minus V minus x. So if a potential has this kind of a symmetry, most potentials have that, like harmonic oscillator has it, and most potential you do in a coursework has it, and that tells you something about the nature of the wave function. We will see it in a little more rigorous detail here. This kind of operation is called a parity transformation. So this is an example of space inversion. It's a discrete transformation. You cannot think about it by a continuous small transformation. It's just a, there is no Lie algebra involved or no Lie business involved here. And the other thing we'll see is this time reversal. This is the two things which we'll do mostly in this course. Then there is another thing called charge conjugation. It requires some a little more depth to understand that. But these three things, CPT symmetry, are basically all examples of discrete symmetries. And then there is another class of symmetry which you have encountered in electrodynamics, and that is basically, so when you go to Maxwell's equation, so can somebody tell me if Maxwell's equation is time reversal symmetric or not? If you take T2 minus T, will it violate time reversal symmetry?
Yes.
Okay.
It's symmetric, right?
But then how do you account for this thing which Rukmini said? Then is that violating Maxwell's equation? Rukmini just said a magnetic field is a time reversal symmetry breaking object. Do you agree to
The
that?
magnetic field is said pseudo vector.
Yeah, that is fine. No. I know it is pseudo vector. That doesn't matter. But think physically. Okay, don't give it a name. So what does it? How does it fit? This statement fit with Maxwell's equation. That magnetic field is a time reversal symmetry breaking object. How does it fit? So you do an experiment in the lab. Okay. You put a magnetic field and you know by Lorentz force a particle will move in a certain direction, right, around it, or particle will do some certain things. Now, if you flip that magnetic field, you know that motion will flip. Or in other words, if you try to flip this direction of motion, which is the time reversal symmetric partner, then you know that you have to also flip the magnetic field to preserve Lorentz force, right? To preserve the electrodynamics and all this structure. So, but Maxwell equation doesn't seem to have any time reversal symmetry breaking, even though there are magnetic field involving equations. Then how to fit these two pictures? Any thoughts?
Along with V, B also flip its direction for time
Yeah.
reversal.
So that is my point. What my point is that then it means that no. So your experiment is you are doing the magnetic. You switched on a magnetic field in your lab, right? And you did an experiment, right? Now you run that movie backward. You make a movie of it. That particle. That is how we are discussing, right? You throw a ball and catch it. You run the movie backward, you cannot say the difference. But here you can say the difference, because if you run the movie backward, it is not moving according to what you expect for a motion by this right hand rule and all that. It's moving the opposite direction, right? Makes sense what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Then how does it fit with Maxwell's equation? Does it violate Maxwell equation? Rukmini, you want to try?
Okay, I missed the discussion in between.
Yeah, so you said that a magnetic motion of a particle in a magnetic field is not time reversal symmetric, right?
Yes.
So what was your argument for that?
Argument as in, because like if the magnetic field is inside the plane and charge is moving, and when you reverse the time, then direction will change. That's why the like direction is changing. It doesn't mean force is changing, and it will follow the other path. So it's breaking the time reversal symmetry.
Okay. Now can you tell me how this point is consistent with Maxwell's equation, which is not time reversal symmetry breaking?
So the change in signs, like when we look at the Maxwell equation, both the signs are changed and the
Yes.
equation structure is still preserved. Is it right?
Then where is this phenomena coming from? So it seems to be contradictory to what I
Electrons,
just said.
like if we think about magnetic field, so it is also like some current is completing a circuit. So if we go
Yes.
time reversal, then current will also move in the
Correct.
opposite direction. So magnetic field
Yeah,
will
you are in the
also-
right direction. So the point is you have to include the source of the magnetic field. You are looking at a part of a system. Okay. So what generates a magnetic field? Let's say, and you have done this assignment in Griffiths, I believe, chapter 5 or something, that if you have a current carrying loop, that loop generates a magnetic field, right? Magnetic moment. Now, when I'm describing this experiment, I'm saying that I switched on the magnetic field and I ran the movie backward. When I did that, I'm looking at a part of a system. I'm not looking at the whole system. What is the whole system? The whole system is whatever is causing that magnetic field, which means you have to include the source of the magnetic field. When you do that, then of course this current is also moving backward. Then automatically the magnetic field also flips backward. And that preserves that everything comes from Maxwell's equation and Lorentz force law. That preserves the fact that there is no time reversal symmetry in there is no broken time reversal symmetry in electrodynamics of this kind of experiment as well. So if your magnetic field is a part of, you are including that in the picture, then you don't have time reversal symmetry breaking, and you will see many examples of that, many fancy examples of that. For example, when you get this, look at this spin orbit coupling in atomic physics, you will see that it generates a magnetic field where the cause of the magnetic field is motion of the atom or motion of a charged electron in an orbit. So since that object is already inside, that will not break the time reversal symmetry. But if you do an experiment where you put the atom in a magnetic field that is turned on from outside in your lab, then that is of course breaking, because you are looking at only a part of system. Okay, and there are very fascinating extension of this idea, because last time I talked about this engineered gauge field, right? Engineered magnetic field. And since in those engineered systems, and one of you is studying Hall effect and all, so this Hall effect also has a magnetic field from outside. But if you do something where the magnetic field is not from outside, which is and somehow the magnetic field source is also a part of the system which you are looking at, which is because of strain engineering. What you are doing, you are straining the system, or you are turning on some speed, or you are letting some spin orbit coupling to dominate to give the magnetic field which is generated by the system Hamiltonian atom itself. Then there is no time reversal symmetry breaking in Maxwell's equation. So there is no problem of time reversal symmetry breaking there. Although you can have individual object in a part of a system like that, like velocity itself is not. But if as far as the dynamics is concerned, there you don't have any time reversal symmetry breaking objects. Make sense? Everybody in the same page? If you have not already appreciated this point, at least now you appreciate that magnetic field, a particle's motion in magnetic field is not time reversal symmetry because the source of the magnetic field is not taken into account. When the source is also taken into account, then it is time reversal symmetry. That's the point of this discussion. So when source of B field is taken into account, motion under EM field is everybody in the same page or confused?
Yes, sir, same page.
Okay. And if you know this Lagrange, anybody, I think all of you know the Lagrangian Hamiltonian formulation of electrodynamics, right? So you know this kind of thing, that L is, there is some factor, E square minus B square, etc. Everybody is familiar with this action? You can work out the Maxwell's equation given this Lagrangian, not action. Griffiths chapter 7 or something. Why there is so much silence?
E square minus B square is invariant under any transformation.
Yeah, but this is, no, I'm
That
talking
one.
about the Lagrangian. Yeah, of course, this is invariant. That's why this kind of formulation is useful. But are you familiar with this formulation of electrodynamics? Did you learn it in? It's there in Griffith's book. Okay, if not, it's the silence means two things: either you have forgotten or you never seen it.
Means you are talking about Lorentz transformation.
No, I'm not talking about. I'm talking about just a formulation of electrodynamics in this language. I think you are mixing it with this formalism when you write the action as F mu nu, right? Which is basically when you write everything in a covariant form with indices and 4 vector, 4 potential. That is also fine. If you know that,
yeah.
it's also good enough. These two are equivalent. Okay. Okay. So the observable is, for me, the observable is your silence. Okay. Now there can be a gauge symmetry between these two states. One is you have never ever seen it, or you have seen it or forgot it. From my observation point of view, I cannot distinguish between these two states. So I will assume both are true. For for some of you this is true, some of you that is true. So revise that part a bit. It's not needed. It's not needed for this course, but in future, if you take some advanced course, it's useful to know that. And it is pretty easy. It is not a new formulation. It's just a different way of writing electrodynamics in a convenient way. Now, if some of you is in the state where you have seen it, okay, so observation is silence, okay, and the state is never seen, and forgot. And maybe there is a transformation that goes from this state to this state. You can always do something about this part. So I would suggest you to go over it. It's useful. But those who are in this state, so you can think that what if I add it? So first of all, this is invariant. This object is not breaking time reversal symmetry, of course, because b goes to minus b, even if you're looking at state square, it's in square form. But there is something interesting happens when you add a term E dot B. So this term is not there in electrodynamics, but in principle you can add it. That doesn't violate anything, but it messes with the time reversal symmetry of the problem. And this thing is called axion electrodynamics. So this term is interesting. Some of you can take a stamp paper, and these are observables in topological insulators and certain kind of many body system, and they are candidates of this dark matter, etc. So all this fancy story apart, just look it up, that if I add, so for those who knows this formulation, those who don't know, they have to first know that what if I add a theta term like that, how does it influence my electrodynamics? This could be a term paper topic. But anyways, let's stick to this point. Let's just this much. If you understand this much, that's good enough for the course. For this course. Okay. In the remaining 5 minutes, actually I'll extend a little bit because I lost some time at the beginning with this connection, etc. I will give you all the possible kind of symmetries you are going to encounter in quantum mechanics, and I'll tell you how they are slightly different, how they are very different in some cases, how some of them are slightly different. So let me switch to the other screen. Everybody in the same page so far?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do ask questions, because as I said that if you are silent, I have to assume many gauge connected states of your understanding. While gauge invariance is useful in quantum mechanics, they are not so simple to handle in this kind of real life scenario. Okay. So notice in quantum mechanics, what do we need? What are we demanding? So we represent a symmetry operator as some unitary transformation, right, on state. Why do we want that unitary? What happened? Did you forget everything?
Charge conservation. Probability conservation.
Yes. So the probability needs to be conserved. So this guy needs to be conserved. If it is not conserved, then of course you are not doing a symmetry operation, you are changing stuff. And the other thing that must conserve is this kind of an inner product between two states, because this is also an observable, right? It's the probability of finding, if you do a measurement of state phi when the system is in state psi, that is this probability, it's an observable, that should be also conserved. And the third thing that should be conserved is this, some expectation value as a function of time, if you demand it to be a symmetry operation. Okay. And we learned extensively that how to deal with this representation of symmetry operator for rotation, which is this angular momentum business, that representation of momentum and angular momentum and all this irreducible representation, etc. But these are the basic demands. So this projective structure and this probability, this inner product, and this AT. And we landed on also the symmetry being connected to degeneracy and a momentum or a kind of commutation. I will go over this thing again. And so far so this is what we learned in classical mechanics in the other board, and this is what we learned so far in quantum mechanics and the gauge, which is psi x2 e to the power I alpha. So this side of the board, We have everything we have learned, we have seen in classical mechanics so far, even if we might not have gone through these particular aspects. And this side of the board, we have everything which we have learned in quantum mechanics so far about symmetries. So now let me end this class with a general classification of what are we going to, where do we stand with in terms of all these symmetries in quantum mechanics, and then I will go over some of these in the next class. So let's make this table of all symmetry operations, okay, in QM. Okay. So notice there are broadly two types. There will be other types. I will also include some other types, but let's just start with these two types. One is usual, and there is transposing. So let me also include the third type. Third type is gauge. And then there is a fourth type. It is permutation. So let me go over each of these types one by one. So usual can be of two types. One is linear, another is antilinear. Where does it come from? It comes from the fact that notice that the object I want to preserve is this guy. This is the most general object. Let's just look at this. Because if I make phi as psi, then it is same as the top, the thing you written it top. So what does it mean that this is preserved? It means this must be equal to, after transformation, some phi prime t equal to psi prime t mod square. So if I remove the square, I can remove the square, it doesn't matter, only the mod needs to be preserved. If the mod is preserved, then this is fine. So that means there are two possibilities, that phi prime psi prime is phi psi. I'm not putting the time anymore, I'm just saying some transform, it can be static also, some operation. And phi prime psi prime is phi psi star. Okay, this is what we need, modulo a gauge factor always. So these two are, one of them is called linear, this relation is called linear, and this relation is called antilinear. So for the next class, just Google a bit what is antilinear and what is linear. I will again discuss it, but get ahead of this. So these two are the possibilities. So the statement is all symmetry operation in quantum mechanics be either represented by a linear operator or an antilinear operator. This is a theorem, this is Wigner's theorem. When Wigner developed this subject is 1927 or something. It's right after the formulation, or I think 1940, I don't remember. So this is the first statement he had. Now this linear is what we have studied so far. Okay. So there are two categories. One is continuous, another is discrete. This is the one which we have studied, the translation, rotation, and the business of Lie algebra. Right? And the discrete, which we are going to study now, is one example is, no, sorry, the discrete example is, we already have seen this space inversion or parity, like Vx b minus x type. This is an example of that. So we have seen this already, but we will go in a little formal way this time. Antilinear is this guy, and we will see in a moment that there is a role of, I gave you a hint already that I has to go to minus I. So that means some conjugation is involved somewhere. So we will learn that time reversal symmetry is one such example. So this is also discrete. So this cannot be continuous. Antilinear cannot be continuous. We will discuss that. Now this is also of two types, L, A, L, but we will not discuss it in this course because this this transposing operator appears in a many body system, which means you need many fermion or at least a Lorentz covariant, a Dirac equation form, which we might come to that near the end of the course. So one example is charge conjugation. Charge conjugation is an example. So this is maybe, this is QM2, this is also QM2 and 1, and this is QM1. So these are the type of general class of symmetries. Then there is a gauge class. The gauge, we have already discussed this. And only we have discussed the continuous symmetry, but we have not treated it in a quantum sense, proper quantum sense. And that is not something we'll do in this course. But we have learned that what the general this symmetry implies. This implies ED, and SU2 is weak, SU3 is strong, but this part is here in QM2. We have not learned the proper quantization of this because this will lead to some gauge bosons, which is something you learn in a later course. But just know this much, that this symmetry leads to that. And then there is a discrete, which is again a little advanced. This kind of example appears in condensed matter physics a lot, like in quantum spin liquids. This appears mostly, this also appears in quantum spin liquids and also in particle physics. So these gauge bosons are usually fermionic. Just know this statement. You don't need to know why right now. You will learn it later. And then there is another class which we will learn also in another 2 weeks, is permutation symmetry or statistics. When you exchange particle, what happens? You will see there are 3 possibilities. It can pick up a plus sign, minus sign, and e to the power alpha, like it can be a gauge. And you will see that in 3D actually only plus and minus possible. So this will lead to this boson and fermion business in 3D. But in 2D, it can also have anion. 2D is not relevant usually in the theory of particles, but in condensed matter physics, you will see there very real examples. So this is basically the whole spectrum of symmetries. This is again we will learn in QM2. This is an overview of all the things you are going to learn here. Okay. Any more questions at I will end here, and next class I'll go on this time reversal symmetry, how to formulate it properly, what kind of operator will represent it, and then the class after that, which is Wednesday, I will talk about parity, and that will be all about this for now in this part of the syllabus. After this, we will move into this permutation symmetry. Okay, and other things you will learn later in some other course. Okay, is it clear?
So what about expectation values, like remains the same over the time? Like on the left hand side of the board, you have written expectation of A is equal to something.
Yes. So you must, this is something I will discuss again in next class. You are talking about this equation, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So I want this transformation to work in a way that this guy is preserved, if it is a symmetry transformation, right? So for that, this psi t, so what will happen? This is some, let me remove the t for the sake of clarity. Let's just say some expectation value. This is something we have discussed actually. So it must appear in this form. Okay. So to preserve this must be same as A, right? So this is how we set up the relation between a symmetry transformation and the operator. And if that has to be true, then A and H has to commute.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so that is the point. Now if you invert time, then it's you have to put the e to the power minus iht and there, and that imply that it has to commute with the Hamiltonian. You can expand that exponential and show that when it will be preserved. Any further questions? Do you understand this table?
Sir,
Schematically, yeah.
so to adjust that I in that Schrodinger equation, if we apply some parity operation on the wave function, will it
No, but
remove the?
Well, but how will you adjust that I? Because you are just flipping the space type. Because notice that what is there? It's double derivative in space. So your space inversion, if you do two derivatives by parity, you applied this x to minus x, right? That's what you mean. But since you have two
Yes.
derivatives, it will not do anything. You understand what I'm saying?
If we take that psi xt, psi x minus t as minus psi xt, this kind of thing, can we take the things like that?
So you are saying now what are you saying? Psi x minus t is minus
Is minus of xt.
Yeah, something of this sort you have to do. But notice that since there is minus in both sides, whatever you do here will be cancelled, right?
Yes.
Right. So you have to think about it. Okay. Okay. Now notice something very interesting here, because we have discussed this before also, that the Schrodinger equation is analogous to heat equation, right? Diffusion equation, because you have seen this heat equation, this kind of second derivative one side, first derivative one. But a thermal process is a dissipative process, and a thermal process is anyway time reversal symmetry breaking. But we cannot let that happen to Schrodinger equation. That's why we have to do a lot of gymnastics with the math to fix that issue. Okay. But this connection is very interesting, because lot of techniques or tools which are developed for heat equation are used to deal with Schrodinger equation. But modulo that every time step you have to maintain these symmetries. Then if you that's why, I mean, even though mathematically the equations are similar, they are describing two very different physical objects. Okay. This is an interesting point to notice, and you can look up a bit about these two similar. This is not a wave equation, because wave equation has double the electromagnetic wave equation, and these equations are very different. And we discussed that where does it come from? It comes from, and at least how to think about it, because in this case, in classical dynamics, you are trying to minimize action. But in optics, you are trying to minimize time. There are two different minimization problems, and that's why there is a dimensional difference between them. When you describe a motion of light, you apply Fermat principle. You say take the minimum time trajectory. When you describe a particle, you say that it will take the minimum action or extremum action trajectory. So that's what leads to this derivative, this difference in a time dimension in these two equations.
Okay,
Any
sir.
more questions? Yeah, those are just food for thought to understand the deeper structures in the theory. But if you have understood these two issues and this recap for quantum and classical symmetries and somehow followed the table, then you are good to go. Okay, if none, let's end the class here. See you tomorrow.
Sir,
Yeah.
sir, in Piazza, you have suggested some term paper,
Hmm.
and there is a topic that exact diagonalization representation of Fermi-Hubbard model and the Heisenberg model in computer. Sir, it
Yeah.
needs some computational knowledge.
Yeah, some basic computation you have to do. Yeah.
Okay.
Because exact diagonalization means what? You have to represent the Hamiltonian on a computer, and then you have to find how to calculate the eigenvalue and eigenenergies, which is of course a computational task.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, eventually you can do some small problems by hand, but I am looking for a little beyond that. I am looking for you to learn that how to do that, for how to put that in a computer in form. You can do like this 2 particle, 4 particle problem by hand. That's very easy. That's actually a quantum mechanics 1 level exercise. but how to do it for many particles, like after 4 it's difficult, right? You cannot easily, let's say three spins or 4 spins. How to do that for that? So you need some scheme to represent that problem on a computer. So you can talk to Soumodip, by the way, he is learning this stuff. So
Okay.
how do you represent this on a computer such that you can calculate it for an arbitrary spin problem? And it's not an easy problem. It's easy to think the problem, but you will very quickly hit a exponential wall, which means the memory requirement is very high, and that's where one need to find some trick, and that's a non-trivial problem. But at least the basic problem, where how do you represent a Hamiltonian of spins or fermions on a computer, that is what I'm looking for in this term paper. Yeah.
Okay,
I'm
sir.
not looking for the tricky part where you come up with a scheme to bypass the memory issue. If you can do that, it's great, but I'm not expecting that right now. Yeah. Okay. Okay, if no further comments, that's all for today.